I think that we could all agree here that the hosts of The View are by far the most vile television hosts to exist on live television as we speak in 2025. You got people out there like Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, Whoopi Goldberg, and among others that are only making the entire situation in the United States even worse when it comes to the division, especially after their constant Charlie Kirk-related comments that continue to backfire on ABC and Disney. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, ever since the Charlie Kirk assassination in September, specifically on September 10th, and most recently the No Kings protest on October 18th, we have seen many of those in the mainstream media, many of those on social media, and even those in Hollywood saying downright awful things. Not just about Charlie Kirk, but also about his supporters, about President Trump and his supporters. Most recently, Robert De Niro saying what he had to say on MSNBC is already creating a major situation, not just for De Niro, but for a lot of those that are saying similar things like Robert De Niro. Now, one thing about Joy Behar is that we all know that she is just as bad as Sunny Hostin out there saying some of the most insane things possible. And when you're looking at The View, right, when you're looking at this actual program via ABC, via the Walt Disney Company, why it's still on the air is beyond me. But we all know that Disney uses that actual program to basically force their political agenda and using the hosts of The View as political talking heads. Now, what's interesting here, though, has a lot to do with what happened to the hosts of The View again now for the third time, where it comes to a whole booing situation. Now, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the No Kings protest causing many of those representing Hollywood to double down on their anti-Trump messaging campaign that is causing more issues in the United States, one major development going on now involves more to do with the hosts of The View, Sunny Hostin, Joy Behar, and Whoopi Goldberg, who were all booed out of the studio after they defended the No Kings protesters, saying terrible things about Charlie Kirk, where Joy Behar was the one this time who started the conversation in front of an audience of more than 70 attendees for The View on ABC. Now, it turns out that Behar most recently decided to come clean about her stance on the No Kings protesters celebrating what happened to Charlie Kirk, where Behar made it very clear that she believes that they should be able to say what they have to say without consequences and should be protected under freedom of speech and freedom of consequences. When Joy Behar put out those Charlie Kirk and No Kings related comments to the View's audience, once, of course, the latest episode wrapped, the hosts of The View were, get this, being booed out of the studio by some of the attendees that were surprisingly Trump supporters that decided to take part in the taping to show their disgust with Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg as well, where the situation that broke out led to other attendees of The View to yell inflammatory comments back at the group of hecklers that were booing at Joy Behar, mainly as she was walking out of the studio. Now, the boos were, of course, so intense that Joy Behar had to cut out of the studio early and skipped signing over a dozen autographs for those that attended the actual taping and was immediately escorted to her SUV. The hecklers who were defending Charlie Kirk, and rightfully so, continued to boo at Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg after, as they were being escorted by security as well to the back of the building. Also skipping to sign autographs due to the, of course, insane thing that broke out over at the studio. The situation was later controlled by security, where those defending Charlie Kirk were told to immediately leave by security. It turns out that those that booed at the hosts of The View, which is now becoming more and more common for some of the tapings, the hecklers were of course reportedly banned from ever appearing on another taping again, and this is the new plan that's set in place by ABC Studios to prevent more of these situations from breaking out again in the near future, and also coming from the top CEO of Disney, Bob Iger, who is trying to keep things calm both during and after the tapings of The View. Now, guys, let me say one thing about this. Now, I think that Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Whoopi Goldberg, they got what they deserved. They were booed at, they were booed out of the studio, they were booed out so hard, basically, to the point that they had to skip signing autographs, which I find to be quite hilarious, that anybody would even want an autograph from these terrible human beings, by the way, who have lied for many, many years to force a political agenda and to actually force a false narrative out there. But we know one thing about Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg as well, is that this will actually continue for as long as they can make it continue, right? They want to keep going with the tapings of The View, and the only controversial one is Sunny Hostin, because Disney basically wants to do whatever they can to improve the ratings, and that's exactly why they're trying to get a host on The View to basically challenge Sunny Hostin's talking points. And look, it's nothing more than for a show. It's all an act, per se. If they get someone on there that is conservative, for example, to combat, Sunny Hostin's, overall talking points, it's not going to make things work as far as I'm concerned. I think people see through all, the phony, things that Disney CEO Bob Iger's chasing for. But again, with the host of The View, mainly Joy Behar, booed out of the studio and forced to skip signing autographs, more security, get this, is now ramping up at the studio location for the taping of The View starting next week. So that's another thing to be very fully aware of, is that you're going to see more security for the taping of The View, and you're going to see more of this, of course, for other programs via ABC, whether it's Good Morning America or Jimmy Kimmel Live, for example. It's going to happen across the board, not just for The View, but for other programs out there. And this is the third time that this happened, and within the past, 2.5, maybe 3 weeks now, give or take, and that's pretty damn common to happen at this point, out of nowhere. Now, the fact that Joy Behar went out of her way to defend the overall No Kings protesters, of those that said such awful things about Charlie Kirk, celebrating his death, and how she believes that they should be backed by freedom of speech and freedom of consequence, that is insanity. And it's not really a big shocker coming from Joy Behar. It's most certainly not a big shocker coming from a lot of those in the mainstream media. And we all saw what Robert De Niro did on MSNBC just a day or two ago, and how they were also, enabling that overall rhetoric. But what's interesting here is that, of course, and more rules will be set in motion before attendees will be able to obtain a free ticket to attend The View down the road. This all explains why Joy Behar is also planning to take time off for some of the upcoming episodes for their latest season. So that is a thing. Joy Behar is planning to take some time off in the middle of November of this year, alright? Just be aware of that. That will be the reason why there will be an empty seat at the actual table of The View, or at most, somebody else replacing her temporarily for 3 to 4 days maximum on and off throughout November. That's exactly why. This is all connected to that. Now, we know that there's a lot of things going on with ABC and Disney, Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, the board of directors, who are really just trying to get everything back together for Disney, and it's not going to work. We all saw how their movies are flopping at the box office, and now you have this overall happening when it comes to everything backfiring for ABC programs like The View, Good Morning America, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and more. But overall, I would love to hear what everyone has to say about Joy Behar, and how we have more and more, moments like this, where you have people attending The View just to go there, and to actually boo at the host of The View. I find it to be quite surprising, happening out of nowhere like this. But overall, I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.